Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode number 23 of all that I've ever learned from Anthony Robbins over the years, and it's episode 23 of 365. Yes, you've heard right. I plan on delivering 365 episodes as a tribute to the great man Anthony Robbins, and to try and encapsulate and summarise all of those key learnings that I've picked up over the years. For those who don't know me, I did go to 2 UPWs in 94 and 95. I read both of his books. Not only did I read both of his books, but I studied both of his books intently, Unlimited Power and Awaken the Giant Within, and also spent lots and lots of time enjoying his tape series, Power Talk, where I'd listen to it over and over again in the car on the way to work and on the way home. And since then, I've continued my love of learning. I've read lots and lots of books. I've read lots of book summaries, and I've developed a huge YouTube channel entitled Jim's 5am Club, where I've published over 1,600 video vlogs of personal development material in the form of book summaries, personal experiences, and other observations. So what I've dedicated myself to do over the next year is to add to that library of wisdom and knowledge that I've been able to accumulate, and to put together a 365 video series of all that I've learned from Anthony Robbins, to add to the material that I have, and to once again pay tribute to the great work that Anthony Robbins has been able to do, a gift that he's been able to share with millions of people throughout the world. So today, what I want to do, if time serves me right, is to focus on one element of his teachings, something that I found very, very profound and very, very powerful back in those early days, 94, 95, and something that he touched on in UPW 23, but he didn't give it the same level of focus and effort that he did back in the mid-90s. And that's on the tension between pain and pleasure, and how pain and pleasure dictate to a great extent what we do, how we do it, how we look at doing it, whether or not we embrace it or not, whether or not it draws us or pushes us away. And this I guess element in our lives is really, really important to understand, and how we look at it, how we understand it, how we embrace it is also important to whether or not we're going to enjoy the process, whether or not we're going to embrace the process of growth and development, because pain and pleasure work together, and we need to understand that it is a welcoming duopoly that needs to be leveraged and used rather than feared and evaded. So one of the things that Anthony Robbins talks about is the fact that most people will do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure, which sounds a little bit odd, but it goes back to our primitive days, our days of survival, where we didn't know whether or not we would get through today in order to see the next day, because there were animals preying on our flesh and trying to hunt us down. We had competing interests. We had other tribes, other people trying to rape, pillage and kill us in our groups and steal our women and children. So most people back in the day were on high alert all the time, and their key modus operandi was to stay alive, to survive, and that part of the brain developed strongly, and it's called our reptilian part of the brain, which has three functions. It either gets us to freeze, fight or flight. And you see it in animals. When confronted, they will either freeze so that they can blend in to their surroundings, hoping that their predator won't see them. They decide to either fight back, or to flee as quickly as they can to escape. And that's just a normal animalistic sort of instinct that humans, just like animals, have. But what differentiates humans from animals is that we also have a thinking part of the brain as opposed to an emotional part of the brain. So psychologists describe the reptilian part of the brain as the emotional part. It's all about emotion. Whatever we do is based on how we feel. And we've got another part of the brain, as Anthony Robbins reminds us, which is the thinking brain. It's the part of the brain that differentiates us from all the other animals and living creatures on the planet, because it enables us to do something between stimulus and action. And that thing between stimulus and action is called thinking, where we assess the first, second and third level consequences of potential action that we may take, and determine what is going to be the best course of action in order to have our best future. So that thinking part of the brain allows us to weigh up the options, to weigh up our desires, to prioritize things, and to figure out which is the best way to go in order to achieve the things that we have highest on our priorities. And what Anthony Robbins suggests here is that because of our past, we are burdened with this fight, flight or freeze reaction, which needs to be overridden by our thinking brain in order for us to grow, develop and progress. Otherwise, we're going to be victims of our fears, and most of those fears are going to be irrational fears. They're going to be fears that we have made up in our mind's eye. They're going to be fears that others have introduced to us, such as our mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, grandparents, schoolmates, media, workmates, YouTube channels, news channels. We are constantly being bombarded with other people's fears and other people's interpretations of what is going on in the world, which in many ways makes people fearful. But those fears can be real fears, but most fears, and this is really important to understand, most fears are irrational fears. Fears that we've made up in our mind, fears that have been taught to us, fears that we've inherited, fears that that may have helped us before, but they are fears which may no longer be relevant because we've moved on, we've grown up, we are different people, we can cope with many more things, and just because it was uncertain and it helped us when we were younger doesn't mean that it's of use now when we've grown up and we're adults, we're independent and more powerful. So we need to have a look and do a stock take of the inventory of fears and things that we have, our mindset, the state that we're in, the way we see the world, what we depend on in terms of information and guidance, our coaches, who we have as influencers, because all of those things will determine who you are and where you're heading. And Anthony Robbins reminds us that this pain and pleasure threshold needs to be addressed, and we need to do this stock take to make sure that the things that we have in there, the things that we depend on when we're making decisions, are going to be empowering and service rather than disempowering and lead us to non-action, to procrastination and to further fear. Because the only way to beat fear is to take action, but not only just to take action, but to take massive action. And through massive action, you will gain massive results. Anthony Robbins doesn't say that those massive results will be positive and good results, but you need to check in. You need to assess and reassess whether or not what you're doing is getting you closer or further from where you want to be. And if it's getting you further from where you want to be, then you need to change your sail. You need to change the angle of your sail. You need to change your tack so that you're able to zigzag and get back to where you want to be. But what you want to do is you want to be action oriented. So when you're taking massive action, you do a check-in to see where you're going, and then you take remedial action to get back on course. But you need to continue to take action so that you're propelled with momentum to where you need to be, where you need to go, knowing that the momentum that you create is going to generate further momentum, and that every path that we're on is going to have a hump in it at some point. Just like this path here, if you look ahead, there's a little hump, a little rise that we need to get up. And unless we have the right amount of momentum, what happens to most people is when they hit that hump, they can't get up all the way to the end, and they roll back, and that's the end of their progress, unless they come back and take a run up with momentum. Most people end up giving up as soon as they find, or as soon as they experience the first roadblock, the first hump, the first pothole, the first challenge, the first barrier. But Anthony Robbins reminds us that once you get over the hump, then there's a downward journey where you build momentum again. And once you get past that little hump, guess what? On the other side, there is less competition, because most of the competition has given up at the beginning of that hump, where they found that challenge, and they've gone on to another challenge, where once again they're going to find a hump in the road, a pothole, and they're going to get bogged, or they're going to not be able to get up there, and they're going to lose momentum, and then search for another road which is going to have another hump, and they're just going to go through life giving up time and time again. And the more you give up, what you're doing is you're building that muscle, that give up muscle, and you become less and less effective every time you give up on a dream, every time you give up on hope, and every time you give up on trying to get better and raising your standard. So, as we were saying before, people will do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. And once again, that's because in the past that served us. It's better to be safe than sorry. How many times have we heard that from our parents and grandparents? And it would have served us when we were younger, when we weren't as good and as strong and capable. But now we are capable. We can take on these challenges, and we can assess the risks along the path and take remedial action, as I mentioned before. So pain and pleasure. Anthony Robbins in UPW back in '94 did a really interesting group task where he explained to the audience back then in Sydney, good old Sydney town, and we had a great team of people there, a very, very energetic audience. I remember it well. And he explained to the audience something which was very, very important. And he says that there is a very, very fine line between pain and pleasure. And I think you need to listen to this quite intently and listen in, because it is powerful. And he says how we see, how we interpret what is going on is going to affect our physiology. It's going to affect how we breathe, how we feel, our temperature, our heartbeat, and lots of the tension or relaxedness in our body. Our physiology has a huge input and a huge impact on how we assess any sort of situation in our life. And if we're fearful, what will happen is we'll tense up. And this is really important, what Anthony Robbins was saying, where he was saying that your physiology, the way you see things, is really, really important, because it impacts in a big way your experience. And he said, and as I mentioned before, that there is a fine line between pain and pleasure. And he took people through an experience where you had to either pick a pleasurable experience or a painful experience, and to try and relive it with as much vivid imagination as you could. And Anthony Robbins would say, I want you to feel the way you feel. I want you to breathe the way you breathe. I want you to do the things, say the things that you said back then when you were feeling that either pleasure or that pain. And I want you to notice what's going on in your physiology. Are you reliving these things in colour? Is it still frame? Is it fast frame? Is your heartbeat racing? Are you hot or cold? Is your body tense or relaxed? Are you smiling? Are you frowning? What's happening to your face? And you went through all of these different triggers, which was really interesting. And then he says, well, that's the way you feel, and you've just noticed what's happening to your physiology and what's happening to your body. And he says, now what I want you to do is I want you to change the way you're breathing. Instead of panting rapidly or whatever, change the way you're breathing. I want you to change the way your body temperature is. Cool moss, remember the cool moss? Change the way you talk to yourself, change the way you see things. Turn it from still frame to quick frame, push it further away from you or bring it closer to you. Add some music to it. And what he was able to show us was that you can have the same stimulus, you can have the same event happening in your life, but you can have a different response, a different enjoyment based on how you see the stimulus. So it's not what's happening to you. This is the key point. It's not what's happening that determines how you feel and how you experience it. It's how you interpret it, how you respond to it, that has the big impact, according to Anthony Robbins. So once again, that is a huge lesson. So you can change the way you respond to something, and it will change the experience for you. Which is, I guess, a way of being able to manage your response to what's happening in the world. A lot of people tend to overreact to things. They get offended at things, and it's not what was said or what was done, as I mentioned, but more so the reaction to it, the way it was interpreted, the way it was communicated to your brain and to your body, and your body will respond back to whatever communication, whatever is happening, be it real or be it imagined. Anthony Robbins continues to remind us that the body can't tell the difference. The body, the brain, the mind can't tell the difference between something that is real or something that is vividly imagined. So how we explain things to ourselves and how we talk about things is really important to the experience that we enjoy and the experience that others around us enjoy as well. So once again, a key lesson to remind us that we have the power, we have the capability of shaping what's happening in our lives and in our worlds by the way we see it, by the way we interpret it, and not to think that somebody else is in control, but that we are ourselves in control, because we are the captain coach, we are the orchestra, we are the conductor, we are the CEO, we are the people in charge, with God's will, of course, of what and how we respond to the many things that happen to us in the world, knowing very well that the reticular activating system, the filter that we have between our subconscious mind and our conscious mind, is at play and is working all the time, and it can be working to serve us, or it can be working to cause us grief. It's up to us to calibrate it. It's up to us to determine how we're going to make it work and to invite positivity into whatever we do. I'm just going to head round here to the welcome wall here at Piedmont, a wall that is dedicated to all the migrants that came to this wonderful country back in 1999, I think, was the inauguration of this welcome wall, and it was sadly the year that my mother was diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer, and I organised to have her name and my father's name and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law's name engraved on this wall back then. And I remember coming down here and her seeing it and just being so happy. So what I'll do is I'll just walk along here just to remember those beautiful days. And all I want, and I guess all that anybody wants once they've lost their parents, all I really want is just to have one more nanosecond with my mother, with my father, with my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and just to thank them for all that they have done for me and my family, and to just thank them and just tell them that I love them, and all that they did is mostly appreciated. It just takes time for us to grow up and to realize that our parents and all of these parents, all of these names on all of these walls had a massive impact on their children, on their families, and to respect it and to just pray to God that they are protected, they are looked after, and that Jesus will remember them in the second coming, and that one day we can all be together as one. So let me have a look here. I'm just trying to find where the names are. So I think it was round about here. I've got my Cubaro here, Sotiropoulos Vasilios, and Baralou Maria. And I think, here we go. Here are my parents. My father, Panagiotis Panaras, and my mother, Katina Kalpaxis. And I remember her running her finger over her name just to feel it, just to get that textural perspective. And there's my father-in-law, Theo Petropoulos, and my mother-in-law, Artemis Georgantis. All four of these people, and all two of my Kubaro's parents as well, have passed away. So God bless them, and may God remember them in his kingdom and remember them at the second coming. Because at the end of the day, that's what life's all about. Life is all about becoming one with God and living and doing his will, serving God, being a partner in creation, taking the gifts that we have. We're all born and we all are different from each other in order to be different for each other. We're different from each other, should I say, in order to be different for each other, to use those gifts, to use those advantages that we have, the unique advantages that we have, so that we can help others to serve God with all our heart, mind and soul, and to love our neighbours, to love one another as we love ourselves. So the first priority is to love, serve and glorify God with everything we do, to ask ourselves a simple question: is what I am doing right now God pleasing? Am I serving God? Am I glorifying God? Am I thanking God? And then to ask yourself and to receive the love of God so that you can love yourself, because there is a selfish element in our lives. We need to be able to love ourselves. We need to be able to receive and express God's love with what we do in a caring way and an unconditional way as well. And once we can love ourselves, once we can feel and experience God's energy and love, then our cup will overfilleth, and then we will be able to express our love for our neighbour. The big problem that a lot of people have is that they never ever get a chance to feel the love of God because they turn their back on God. They never get to love themselves because they are too consumed in ego, and they of course never get a chance to love anybody else because once again it's all about themselves and not about taking what they have to serve God and to serve others and to help others. So I think I'll leave it there for now. So once again, thank you for joining me on this episode of All That I've Learned from Anthony Robbins. I have a very tough day today in the office. I've been summoned to come in to talk to management about a few things, but being a union delegate, I am the voice of my fellow employees, and what I want to do today is I want to tell the management of the organisation that I work for that I love working for the organisation, and I love working and I love the organisation more than what they do. And what I want to do today is to raise the standard, to help them get it right, to make sure that the processes are working so that all the workers are getting paid correctly, accurately, and that we all understand where we're coming from, and we're working together to raise the standard and be the best we possibly can so that we can ensure our future. So take care, enjoy this wonderful, beautiful day. Spring in Sydney at its best. Not a cloud to be seen, not a cloud in the sky. And today is our oyster. Today is the day that we can embrace life like we are invited to every single day, to make the most of what's going to present itself to us today, and to do it with love, to do it to serve God, to serve each other, to help each other, so that we all get through life. And we're going to experience the ups and downs, but to get through life with purpose, with meaning, and to be fulfilled, to have done it our way, to have done it in partnership with God, but to fully express our own free will, knowing very well that that free will also comes with first, second and third level consequences. But we learn and we grow. Take care, Yassas and bye for now.